We construct elaborate systems, politeness, avoidance, passive aggression, to circumvent the simple act of stating an uncomfortable truth. It's less about fearing conflict and more about indulging a narcissistic fantasy that our feelings are somehow exempt from the brutal logic governing all other phenomena. The domestic tableau, the spouse, reclining amidst nacho debris, subjected to the silent judgment of the mother-in-law. The narrative frames this as a button-pushing exercise, a deliberate act of antagonism. But what if the mother-in-law's tidying isn't a calculated assault, but merely tidying? A habit, a compulsion, a quiet desperation to impose some semblance of order on a universe spiraling toward entropy. The outrage isn't caused by the act, but projected onto it, a convenient vessel for pre-existing anxieties, resentments, and the general annoyance that accompanies shared living spaces. Maria's story, framed as a tragedy, reveals a remarkable capacity for self-importance. A presentation interruption quickly becomes proof of systemic sexism, a convenient explanation for her own anxieties. She circles around the question of whether Lewis made her feel disrespected, a tiresome evasion of personal responsibility. Of course, he didn't make her feel anything, she decided he did. This insistence on external validation, this need to cast herself as a victim, is ultimately more revealing than any actual slight of me, is ultimately more revealing than any actual slight. It's a testament to the human capacity for stating the self-evident that a reasonable expectation of professional courtesy does not warrant a philosophical treatise. She wants respect, recognition, doesn't everyone? But framing these desires as profound revelations feels excessive. Janet, subjected to a supervisor's capricious project reassignment, exemplifies the modern workplace circus. Months of effort were summarily dismissed. The impulse to react, to unleash a torrent of justified indignation, is understandable, but to act on that impulse, to engage in a heated exchange while still simmering with resentment, is to forfeit control. The strategic pause, the calculated delay, isn't cowardice. It's a recognition that emotional clarity isn't cowardice. It's a recognition that emotional clarity is a prerequisite for effective communication. It's a lesson Confucius might have appreciated, a focus on self-cultivation as a means of achieving harmonious interaction, or war. During the exchange between Mark and Tim, the boardroom critique, Mark is expecting reciprocal praise and is blindsided by Tim's detailed criticism. He feels attacked and grows defensive. The problem isn't Tim's honesty, but Mark's fragile ego. He's unable to tolerate feedback, to accept that his performance isn't flawless. It's a reminder that vulnerability is a prerequisite for growth and that the pursuit of perfection is a fool's errand. The expectation that communication should be a reciprocal exchange of pleasantries is a particularly childish delusion. It's a refusal to acknowledge that truth, however uncomfortable, is often more valuable than politeness. The sandwich approach to delivering criticism, a technique lauded for its supposed gentleness, is a particularly insidious form of intellectual dishonesty, burying the vital message beneath layers of meaningless fluff. To assume another party will figure out what matters most is a breathtaking display of arrogance. Clarity, it seems, is too much to ask. The insistence on trusting another to perform a correction while simultaneously obscuring the nature of the deficiency is a particularly passive-aggressive maneuver. Consider Charlotte, a patient subjected to the Kafkaesque labyrinth of insurance billing. Her positive outlook didn't magically resolve the error, it merely allowed her to navigate the bureaucracy with slightly less despair. The billing department didn't suddenly develop a benevolent spirit, they responded to documented evidence and persistent inquiry. To portray this as a triumph of optimism is to ignore the systemic absurdity of a system designed to obfuscate and delay. The anecdote isn't a testament to the power of positive thinking, it's a demonstration of how to effectively escalate a complaint. In the familiar pattern of relationship dysfunction, Jotham and Yvonne stand out. Like two medieval alchemists attempting to transmute lead into gold through sheer willpower and the occasional grunt, they've perfected the art of turning physical intimacy into a bureaucratic nightmare. Like a philosopher trapped in a self-help seminar, they engage in a dialogue as predictable as a soap opera in a monastery. Yvonne, armed with the wisdom of a management consultant and the patience of a saint on Prozac, attempts to bridge the chasm between two egos as wide as the Grand Canyon and twice as deep. Jotham, with the emotional range of a microwave oven and the social skills of a cactus, perceives Yvonne's attempts at understanding as a covert operation by an alien species. His defensiveness manifests as a garden gnome in a thunderstorm, rigid, predictable, and entirely out of place. Meanwhile, Yvonne, channeling the spirit of a Zen master who's read too many self-help books, offers a series of contrasting statements that sound like a bad translation of a fortune cookie. In another marital impasse, one partner, deemed too sensitive, triggers a self-fulfilling prophecy of silence. The other, fearing an emotional outburst, preemptively withdraws, solidifying the very dynamic they claim to abhor. It's a dance of mutual resentment, choreographed by a shared inability to tolerate discomfort. They've negotiated a tacit agreement, a pact of emotional non-aggression, that effectively condemns them to a lifetime of unaddressed grievances. A bleak parody of Kant's categorical imperative, substituting genuine moral obligation with a cowardly avoidance of conflict. The advice, catch it early, is insultingly simplistic, as if a timely intervention can overcome decades of ingrained behavioral patterns. A hopeless situation, really. The rhetorical questions, what do I really want? What would I do right now if I really wanted these results? Are less an invitation to self-reflection and more a demand. Following the pattern of attributing outcomes to reductive narratives, the identification of victim, villain, and helpless stories as the top of the list is a particularly tiresome trope. As if human motivation can be reduced to a handful of oversimplified categories, and that one can simply choose to adopt a more empowering narrative. Still, the universe, indifferent to our therapeutic aspirations, will continue to operate according to its own immutable laws, and we, trapped within the confines of our own subjectivity, will continue to spin our stories.